Frank Reich was hired over the interim guy, Steve Wilkes. Now, I can understand if David Tepper, I can understand if David Tepper had gone for a bigger name. Steve Wilkes is not a big name. I think football people understand what he has and the value that he has. But your average fan is not saying, hey, you got to go out and get Steve Wilkes. Frank Reich is a bigger name than Steve Wilkes, but it's not huge. But a bigger name than Frank Reich. And some of you have been listening to some of you people are really fascinated with a coach who won a Super Bowl in the pre-IG, pre-TikTok era. That would be Sean Payton. Yeah, I'm hating on Payton. So if you wanted Sean Payton, everybody's darling, media darling, Sean Payton, I guess I can understand it. But Jim, I keep looking at this, and I look at what Frank Reich did in his last job and what Steve Wilkes did in his last job. They both were dealing with problematic offenses and organizations and starts that didn't reflect what ownership expected. And one guy did a better job than the other. And the guy who did the better job was Frank Reich in Carolina.
Yet, you're talking about Steve Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes in Carolina. Yet Frank Reich comes in and takes the job that Steve Wilkes not only kept warm, but made more appealing than we thought a few months ago. It's not surprising. I just want to point this out. It's not surprising. It's disappointing. I've seen this story before. It's just another chapter in a very long book that was started before you or I stepped onto this planet. So I'm just wondering what you see or what your observations are when you look at Carolina Panthers hiring their next head coach, and it is Frank Reich.
Well, when you say, number one, that it's another chapter in the story, part of me says it is also another example A in Brian Flores' lawsuit against the NFL for discriminatory hiring practices, of which Steve Wilkes signed on to that class action lawsuit. So I think that somehow this will come up at some point in that lawsuit. Let me say this first off before we get too deep into it. I think Frank Reich is a good coach. I really do.
Yep.
Yep. Is he the guy that I would have chosen? No, not in this case. I believe that Steve Wilkes earned this job. Here's the other thing. Steve Wilkes, you knew, was not going to get this job a couple of different ways. Number one, when he was hired as the interim coach, what did David Tepper, the owner, say? Steve Wilkes would have to do a quote-unquote incredible job, end quote, to even be considered for the job. So right away, you knew that he was not the guy that David Tepper was interested in hiring. Then at the end of the season, after he has this club in playoff contention, admittedly in a bad division, but with 1 week to go, in 1 week to go in the season, they are playing for the division title, right? Who could have predicted that when that team was 1-5, when they had traded away their best player, Christian McCaffrey, when they were going through playing musical chairs with quarterbacks, whether it was Baker Mayfield, PJ Walker, or Sam Darnold, when Steve Wilkes had to fire a couple of coaches who he felt were not on the same page with him because they were tied to Matt Rule. All of those things working against him, and what happens? The team goes 6-6 under him, and again, with 1 week to go, is in position to compete for the division title. In my mind, I tend to think that's a pretty incredible job because I don't think anyone saw that coming. And yet what happens? He doesn't get this job, even though he is a local guy from that area. He is respected and beloved. His players came out in support of him getting that job, just as, say, Charger players came out in support of Brandon Staley keeping his job. So when you add it all up, to me, this again shows me that Steve never had a chance at this job. And again, remember, you and I talked about it on this show. What happened after the final game of the regular season? Considering the great work that Steve Wilkes had done, and the owner didn't even show up to the game. Didn't even show up to the game to say thank you, players. Thank you, Steve Wilkes, for not throwing in the towel on this season, right? So, as you say, none of this is shocking or surprising, but it is incredibly disappointing particularly for a coach who I believe had earned the opportunity to have this job.
And you said in this case, and I agree with you. Yeah, Frank Reich is a good coach. He's good. He's a good coach. But
right.
to use David Tepper's word, not incredible. Not incredible. No. Do you realize Frank Reich in the NFC South, AFC South, they never won that division. He didn't have a division. He didn't have a division title on his resume. He has not been someone who has developed a quarterback. As a matter of fact, he usually brings in the older quarterback. I know Andrew Luck left, not his fault. But Andrew Luck was out, and they had Phillip Rivers for a season, and they had Carson Wentz, his guy Carson Wentz, but that was a disaster. He stood on the table for Carson Wentz and wound up apologizing to Jim Irsay. More on him in a second. Wound up apologizing to Jim Irsay for saying, hey, Carson Wentz is our guy. Wentz came in, the numbers look good, but they were turned off by him, and they traded him out. Then they bring in Matt Ryan. That didn't work. And then they said that was goodbye. It was goodbye to Frank Reich after that.
Right. But Michael, this is something I just want to ask you about this or make this point to you too, in terms of the media's culpability and how these coaches are portrayed publicly. So when I'm reading a story today about Frank Reich being hired, it talks about how he was with Philadelphia when Carson Wentz had that MVP season. He didn't win the MVP, but he was in line, a front runner to win that MVP and whatnot. But it never says, well, when he had Carson Wentz in Indianapolis, Carson didn't do squat. So it's interesting that we're praising him for having Carson when Carson did well, but we don't mention how poorly Carson played when Frank was the head coach and Carson was under his tutelage there. So I think in terms of how we portray these coaching candidates and the perceptions that people have of them, we in the media are culpable in terms of guys like Steve Wilkes not getting the true opportunity that they deserve because we sugarcoat for some, but not for others.
Yeah, to a degree. And Jim, I agree with you. I agree that we could do a better job. We could all do a better job of being more precise in our descriptions and being more thorough when we talk about these candidates and these coaches. So as you pointed out, great example. If you're going to give Frank Reich credit for getting Carson Wentz to an MVP type level in Philadelphia in 2017, then you also have to tell the story of, well, Frank Reich was also the guy who finished second at best. Second in the AFC South his entire time there, never won the division, and had to apologize to the owner. This is actually, I didn't make this up. It's a fact. He had to apologize to the owner for bringing in Carson Wentz. But the reason I say to a degree is, I'm going to tell you a story. And I can't be too specific because it's a little sensitive. And, this is maybe a personnel issue. I maybe shouldn't be saying all the details, so I'll speak in general.
I love story time with Michael Holley.
Yeah.
I love story time with Michael Holley.
I'll speak in general. So Boston University, where I teach sometimes at BU, they were in the midst of hiring some new professors. And they brought one professor in who happened to be African-American, brought candidate in. And they were talking to her about the department and how the department lacked, frankly, black people in positions of authority. And they were talking, hey, we got to be better. They were saying all these things, we got to be better. And she kept asking the same question. But why is it? But why are you in this situation right now? I want to hear you. You can tell me about how you need to be better and how you need to be stronger and you're committed to this. But I want you to give me the why. And I loved her style. I loved her approach because what she was getting at is, you tell me. I want to hear it in your words. I'm not going to allow you to hide behind DEI. I'm not going to allow you to hide behind all these catchphrases and all this stuff and how you feel this and you feel that. No, tell me why. Show your work. Give me an explanation. So we could talk about the media and we could talk about the Rooney Rule, but why? Give me a why. Give me a why, owners. Why do you find yourself in this position? They don't like to be told what to do. They don't like the Rooney Rule. Don't tell me what to do with my team. Let me do what I'm going to do. So when we watch you do what you do the same thing over and over. We've seen it over and over. It's not the media. It's them. It's their lack of,
no question.
I don't know what it is. Maybe their lack of trust, lack of comfort, lack of belief that somebody like Steve Wilkes can have a vision for a program. And amazing, you're right, it was incredible. You know what he was able to do without training camp and without a good quarterback? He was able to make a team competitive. He was able to come up with a vision overnight. He didn't know Matt Rule was going to be fired, when he was going to be fired. He didn't know Christian McCaffrey was going to be traded, and Robbie Anderson, not a great player, but like a good third or fourth receiver. It looked like they were about to tear this thing down. He didn't know they were going to have to release Baker Mayfield and that Sam Darnold would get hurt and that P.J. Walker would be his guy. And on the run, he kind of cobbled it together and made them competitive. So
he changed their culture. He changed their culture.
Is that not enough? Is that not enough? So and Burt Breer, is my guy. Burt Breer is my guy. Friend of the show, brother of the show. He's a Buckeye. He's got good judgment, good intelligence. But put that tweet up again. That tweet, and he's just going with the information he was given. That tweet pisses me off. The Panthers have felt like with a young core headed by Brian Burns, J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin, Derek Brown, Ike Ekwonu, and DJ Moore, they could offer a coach a place where if you could find a quarterback, you could win right away. Okay. So you're telling me that Steve Wilkes did not have a quarterback, and all the things I just said still happened. He didn't have a quarterback, nor did he have training camp. Training camp is huge. He didn't have his own staff. That's huge.
See, but Michael, this is why I say to you, we in the media are culpable in this as well, because we put out stuff like this and we feed this to the public. It's truly infuriating. And I like Bert, and I think he does a great job and all of that, but I agree with you 100% on this. So now now Frank will get to select or bring in a quarterback, and all these other pieces are in place. And if they have success, then he's the savior. Well, I would like to see what Steve Wilkes could do if he had a quarterback to go with this young talent that they have defensively. Why not give him that opportunity, which, again, he has earned? He's not asking for anything that he did not earn. But that's the kind of stuff that's infuriating to me because, again, we don't focus on what the real story is there. And we create these, to me, false narratives. Steve, I can't use the word that I want to use on a family show, but Steve Wilkes was done wrong here.
We are a family show. We're a family show, but it's a family show where, hey, I don't know what kind of family you come from. Okay, kind of family I come from, yeah, there's some nice stuff up in the living room. Then downstairs, aunts and uncles who've had a little something to drink, little music playing, maybe got some card games going, playing some dominoes. They say some stuff. They say some stuff that, oh, okay, oh, honey, go to bed. You don't want to hear them talking. They're talking. So go, you can say it. It's all in the same house. We're moving from the living room to the basement. So go ahead. Say what you got to say.
Bruh, Steve Wilkes got screwed, okay? Steve Wilkes got screwed. Because let me say this to you. So now the narrative is that David Tepper wanted an offensive-minded coach, right? Never mind that Matt Rule, who he hand-selected himself, had an offensive background at Temple, right? But he wants an offensive-minded coach. Too.
Still paying him. And still paying him.
I know for a fact who Steve Wilkes was considering for his offensive coordinator position. I know some of the names that are on that list. And let me tell you, they are quality names. So to say you need an offensive-minded head coach, to me, is just foolish thinking again on the parts of owners who don't ask the question of what is required of a head coach to be successful? And do you create a list of the things that you need or your vision for what is required for a head coach to be successful? Tony Dungy, who you've had on the show, has spoken on this before publicly to me about it and whatnot, and says NFL owners do not know how to hire head coaches, and the NFL should have a class to help them. And I have said this, I think, to you. If not to you, I know I've said it elsewhere and written it. If I were in charge of the NFL, forget all this Rooney Rule stuff that we know is just window dressing. I would say to NFL owners, here's what I need for you before you ever do a head coaching search. I need you to put down in writing what it is that you are looking for in a head coach. All of the traits. Do you want someone older or younger? Someone with previous experience, no experience? Just someone who's hands-on, someone who delegates, a teacher, or someone, again, who allows others to teach. All these, put it all down. Defense, offense, especially whatever. And then start your interview process. And when you get through your interview process, and you make your selection, go back and look at that list and say, how many of these boxes, in terms of the vision that you have for your head coach, did you actually check? Or did you get carried away with a name and simply want to win a press conference or hire someone that consultants are telling you is the hot name so that you can then say to your public in 2 years when that coach flames out, don't be mad at me. I hired who the media and the consultant said I should hire. Yeah. These are the hot names, you know?
Well,
and that's what we see here. Think about this. On average, since 2000, there have been 7 head coaching changes per year. On average, that is nearly a quarter of your league is changing its head coaches every year. If that does not tell you that your blueprint is flawed in terms of how you run your organizations and your business, I don't know what else would tell you that.
Well, last thing I'll say as we head to break, last thing I'll say is that, Jim, this year, I could be wrong, but this year on My Bets Your Money, I won more than I lost, barely. Won more than I lost. That means, hey, going against the spread, I did all right. So I'm going to give you a My Bets Your Money on Thursday. Today's Thursday, right? Here's a Thursday My Bets Your Money. I will bet you that the new head coach in Indianapolis, to bring this full circle, will be Jeff Saturday. So think about that. One interim guy did a disastrous job. He's going to get hired. One interim guy did an incredible job, and he's moving on. Brother from another rolls on. We'll talk some hoops coming up. Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.